Wood Lake Nature Center, a dynamic wetland ecosystem located in the middle of an urban area, is managed to maintain the best water quality and greatest biodiversity possible. Covering more than 150 acres, this cattail marsh and bottomland forest provides habitat for more than 200 migratory and resident bird species, as well as many mammals, amphibians, reptiles, fish, insects, and other invertebrates. A marsh is among the most diverse ecosystems on Earth, but Wood Lake wasn't always a marsh. Around 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, a massive sheet of glacial ice covering North America and the Minnesota landscape began to melt and recede. The water flowing from the melting ice cap created a wide river and deposited sediments called drift, hundreds of feet deep. Huge chunks of ice broke off the glacier and became buried in the drift. As these ice chunks melted, they formed shallow, water-filled basins in the former river channel. Most likely, Wood Lake and the Minneapolis chain of lakes evolved during this process. Over time, rains washed finer silts into Wood Lake, which was originally 20 to 25 feet deep. These finer silts created better conditions for aquatic plant growth, and eventually, plants grew from the bottom of the lake. As these plants died, they accumulated on the bottom and decomposed into organic muck. Sediments and organic muck continued to be deposited into the lake each year and would gradually fill it, allowing upland plants and even trees to grow. Through this gradual process, a lake is slowly transformed into marsh and eventually forest. Lake of the Woods, as it was called by the Dakota Sioux living in the area, existed as a shallow 10-foot deep lake surrounded by forest wilderness. The Louisiana Purchase of 1803 claimed this area for the United States, and Army Lieutenant Zebulon Pike and Colonel Josiah Snelling explored and secured the area for pioneer settlement. One of the very early settlers, Riley L. Bartholomew, staked his claim to 80 acres of land adjacent to Wood Lake, and in 1853 built his home where it still stands today, overlooking the lake. Other farms soon surrounded the lake, and it became popular for picnicking and recreation. During the winter, long saws were used to remove ice for summer icebox refrigeration. Wood Lake and Richfield Lake, originally part of Grass Lake, were once connected by a water channel. As the area grew, locals needed easier access across the channel, and they soon filled over a large beaver dam to allow horses and wagons to cross. This became 66th Street, which permanently affected the natural water flow into Wood Lake. As the Minneapolis area grew, housing developments began replacing farms. In the 1920s, land near Wood Lake was considered very desirable. Houses and streets soon surrounded Wood Lake, further influencing drainage patterns in the basin. In addition to human impact, water levels have always fluctuated with seasonal rainfall. Records indicate the lake was completely dry in 1865, and high water was recorded in 1907. The water level again dropped in the 1920s, and a well was used to pump water into the lake to maintain a 4-foot depth. By the Dust Bowl years of the 1930s, the lake was again completely dry, and vegetation took over the entire lake basin as seen in this aerial photo. By 1947, the water had recovered to normal levels.
I'm Floyd Roman. I was a police officer in Richfield beginning in the year 1947. There used to be a gravel road on the west side of the lake, and oftentimes during a lax period, I'd go down there and sit in the squad car. On one of those occasions, I noticed an airplane approaching at a low level, and it did have pontoons on it, and it did land on Wood Lake. Now, I don't know whether the pilot saw me or not, but he immediately went back down to the other end of the lake and took off.
The lake was used for recreation by homeowners, and the public could access the lake via Grant Park at the north end of the lake where you are now standing. In this 1953 winter photo, you see the Bartholomew Farm and plowed skating rinks on the north end of Wood Lake.
My name is Bill Cochran. As a small boy with an inquisitive mind, seeing people on ice boats, and absolutely was fascinated by that. Wood Lake was a prime place for that, and again, just envision it full of water and as a perfect body, and it lent itself very well to that type of thing.
Hi, I'm Will Steger. I'm at the Wood Lake Nature Center.
Wood Lake really inspired me, and I think without Wood Lake, I would never have traveled on the adventures I've been on. It was really great as a kid, and I know it inspired a lot of young kids of my age, too. It gave us that shot of nature that we would not have had, and it's really great that Wood Lake, I come back here today, and it's still pretty much the same. It's changed somewhat with the freeway around it, but the wilderness of the small urban setting is still here and intact and open for other people to enjoy.
In the 1950s, further urban expansion continued to have major impact on Wood Lake. The construction of Highway 35W and Interstate 494 dramatically changed the drainage patterns of the Wood Lake Basin. By 1961, the impact of the bordering highways and a drought period once again created a shallow marsh completely grown over. At that time, a marsh held no recreational value, and people soon began dumping their trash in the basin. Alarmed citizens began a campaign to reclaim the area for recreational use, and soon debated ideas ranging from an indoor ice arena to an 18-hole golf course to returning it to a natural lake. A few visionaries suggested not only leaving the lake in its natural state, but also creating an interpretive nature center. In 1966, the City Council approved this vision, and construction began in 1970. The wetland was also dredged to remove excessive accumulations of silt and mud, which resulted in more open water habitat. The Nature Center opened in May 1971. Initially, the basin water level was maintained by pumping groundwater into a man-made stream which flowed into the lake. As urban development continued, the flow of stormwater into the lake quickly increased, and in 1987, heavy rains flooded overlooks and the trails around the lake. The drainage system feeding into Wood Lake now includes overflow from Grass and Richfield lakes, and today the marsh water level rises 4 inches for every inch of rain that falls. This additional water potential made it necessary to connect Wood Lake to the Interstate 494 drainage system, which flows into the Minnesota River. Water is retained at Wood Lake until the interstate system can accept more water and is then pumped into that system through underground culverts. This level control system maintains the desired water level in Wood Lake. In another effort to increase storage capacity and improve water quality, Wood Lake was dredged again in the late 1990s. Stormwater sedimentation ponds were created on the edges of the marsh to capture sediment and debris before flowing into the main body of the marsh. This system has dramatically improved the water quality of the marsh, as proven by an observed increase in the diversity of aquatic invertebrate species. Even with all these improvements, heavy rains in the spring of 1997 caused flooding on some of the trails. In response, the lower elevation trails were raised 3 feet and remain dry and accessible throughout the year. The Wood Lake Marsh system functions as a biological filter that purifies the stormwater that runs off the streets. It also provides an oasis of wildlife habitat within the urban metropolis. Today, redevelopment continues to impact this area as more impervious surfaces create more stormwater runoff and nearby multi-unit dwellings increase visitor impact. With ever-increasing population and development, this resource requires constant management to sustain the diversity of plants and animals living within it. The management practices being implemented to enhance this natural area continually change to ensure its viability well into the future. As you explore this beautiful area, be sure to take only pictures and leave only footprints. so visitors following you may have the same pleasurable experience you have enjoyed, and the diversity of plants and wildlife will continue to thrive in the dynamic wetland ecosystem of Wood Lake Nature Center.